Yes, I did.
Yeah,
I'm still listening to it
yeah,
now. My favorite one was with him and Anurag, just like both like hammering like different people answering questions. That was really cool. I like Anurag's style especially, to be honest. But yeah, it's
yeah.
really
Like
really
Anurag is like a
cool retreat.
he's very aggressive guy, but I like both of them because of that, because they're not like up to cover the
They don't
bullshit.
sugarcoat things. Yeah, they're not full of shit. They don't
Yeah.
sugarcoat their advice. They just say it how it is, and sometimes that does come off like offensive to people. But I think it's very effective. You know.
Yeah, that's the thing is like once that you if you start giving real advice to people, yeah, you gotta get people triggered. And it's funny to see that, like usually people say they want to change, but they all get up the very defensive if you call
Mm,
them some bullshit, right? Like if you
right.
really wanted to change, at least the way I see it is, like if you want to change, then you be happy to look at it.
Exactly. Yeah. What do you think is the best way to do that? To kind of give people real direct and honest feedback while also, not in a way where will actually be effective and will help them and not just like trigger them, have them be resistant to it. Or is that all up to them? Is that like their choice? And you can only like give that reflection and see how they react. What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
like that's kind of like, it really depends. Like sometimes it can look like you're just asking questions and you're not giving them any answers. You let them like kind of figure it out by themselves.
Right.
But some other times, like if the person isn't, or it depends. Like how much time do you have with that person, and how open is that person to look at that? Because I feel like, yeah, if someone is already much open to, it's funny because I went to this retreat so with Royal, my housemate, and since we came back, because of the experience we had in the retreat, he was way more open, or at least like he was more aware of his bullshit, right?
Hmm.
And so I was like, I became much more of a dick with him, like to trigger him on purpose, to then like tell him later on how much easy it is to trigger, now easy to like to poke his buttons. And then he
Right.
gets even more, and then he gets more defensive about that, like he's like, oh, I'm not easy to poke buttons, but then he's when he's saying that, he's like getting poked again. So
Mm.
it's just funny.
Yeah,
But
that's
it's a
actually.
very, like, yeah, I had this conversation with him, and I think it could be very, what?
I was just gonna say that's actually a recurring theme that I see in me and in other people who meditate. It's like you sit down and meditate and you get really present and you become unreactive, you're high vibration. But then as soon as you stop meditating and then I like make a joke or something, then you get really triggered. It's like, I guess the meditation didn't really work. But
You know,
that's
that,
yeah.
yeah, I remember one night when my Raul was like doing yoga in his room, and I got in the door on purpose, like, "Yo, what's up, bro? I need this, blah blah." And he gets like, "I'm doing yoga." I was like,
Right,
and I'm like, "Well, do you know what fucking yoga is? You're getting all reactive, all butthurt,
right.
but that's not fucking yoga."
It's an interesting phenomenon because it's like the work of doing yoga is supposed to make you more like loving and flowing in union, as it's called. But at the same time, when you do meditation, when you do yoga, you're diving deep, and sometimes that does bring up certain things that do trigger you. So it's almost like a balance. It's like you are going to be less reactive, but at the same time, in the short term, you will be more triggered, right? Especially if you're doing that deeper work.
Yeah, I think that's, you should, like, if you really want to change, like get yourself someone that triggers you all the time, and they will accelerate that for you.
Yeah, I love that.
Like
That's
if like something that really helped me to accelerate that was like putting yourself around unconscious, very unconscious, selfish people, forces you to like, if you want to grow, if you not want to become a victim, it forces you to grow so that much faster, to in order to be able to like cope with or live with them, and like relate with them, with those very unconscious or reactive people that get angry all the time and shit, and always triggers you. And that's, yeah, like I never ran away from that. I actually like kind of like went for it, kind of like facing those things. And I feel like, yeah, like we do want to change, but we want to keep our bullshit while trying to change but keeping the bullshit.
Right. It's like, how can I change but hold on to all my bullshit? You know? And it's hard.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's hard to let go of your bullshit. It hurts. It's like, but this is a part of me, right? And you have to let go of that part of you or what you thought was a part of you. But that's honestly how it's done. If you want to level up, if you want to evolve, if you want to access your full potential, it's like you're carrying all this heavy baggage, you're carrying all this load. And when you let it go, it's going to hurt, but it's going to be worth it in the end. But our ego doesn't like hearing that, you know? So that's why.
Yeah, so like I have a good example from yesterday. I was having a call with the client, and the way that I work with them is like we create challenges, and if they don't accomplish the challenges, they pay me more money. And so the first response from him was like to get all defensive and then like defend his position or defend where he was coming from in that situation. And I was like, well, that you do want to keep defending that point of view is exactly why you didn't get change and you get the results that you want, because you're trying to always defend those points of views that you currently hold, you're currently attached to, but those are getting you the results that you're getting. So what do you want? Which ones do you prefer?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I mean, I've experienced that with coaches in the past. Like, I pay them to give me real feedback, but then when they give me real feedback, I'm like, fuck this guy. He's like trying to control my life or something. And the brain will think of like, at least in my case, like my mind will think of like different reasons of why, oh, they shouldn't have said that or they shouldn't have done that. But in reality, that's why I paid them, like to call me out on my bullshit. But it's easy to forget that, right? Because, you know, we're driven by our emotions. But that's why it's key to kind of look past that and look at like, I did this to change my life, not to just stay the way I'm feeling. And that's the thing, like about giving up your power. It's like we have this power, then we give it up to people. We give it up to excuses. We give it up to circumstance. We give it up to the government. We give it up to girls or whatever. And I think a lot of what we should talk about here, especially because this video is all about like giving up your power, is how do I get that power back? And I guess that would be like my question to you. It's like, people, I'm sure you've heard this from different clients, like, oh, but my parents this. Oh, but I don't have enough money this. It's like, how do I start taking that power back and not externalize it to money, to people, whatever?
Yeah, man. Like I think that's from my own experience. Like I was in a position when I started where I had nothing, and I even have the perfect excuse to not go out and put myself out there because there was almost no people on the streets in my hometown. So I was like, oh, but I can't do it here because there's not enough people.
Right.
But I decided like it's the options is either like you come up with those excuses and keep yourself stuck, or you just work what you currently have. Like you already have enough. Like it's mind blowing to see that most people have so many resources at their disposal. They think they all these things holding them back, but it's not that. It's just they're not allowing themselves to see the resources they already have.
Right.
They think those are not enough.
Right. And we also have this belief that like we need all this stuff. Like we need the perfect situation before I can take action. I need this much money before I can take action. When in reality, it's like if you really want something, all the excuses will just fade away. They will fucking disappear if you really want it. Like if that desire is like really strong, all the excuses will disappear and all you'll see is the opportunities that you need to take, because there's always an opportunity. There's always something that you can do. There's always an action that you can take. But for you to do that, you got to let go of all this bullshit excuses of like, I don't live in the right city, or I don't have enough money, or whatever. Like I have a bunch of those excuses myself, but I can't just believe that. You know what I mean? There's always something to do right now. There's always something to take action on, even if you don't have access to money, even if you don't have access to whatever city to live in. There's always something you can do. And I think winners or people who make it are just people who look at like, what can I actually do? What's within my control? And just let go of what's not within your control. What's outside of your control won't help you. So just fucking let that go and focus on what you can do right now. But that's another very subtle way that we give up our power. We look at things we don't have, then we're like, oh, because I don't have it, I can't reach this goal. Then you give all your power to that. And all that energy can be just being used for taking action right now. What do you have access to? What can you do right now? How powerful are you in this moment? You know what I mean? Instead of just giving that power up. But
So I have a good example on that. Like for my case, when I started, I was such already in a disbalanced situation where I was just like for 7 years playing video games, like just staying in my house, like completely isolated from everything and everyone. And I was in this position where like I couldn't, if I wanted to change, I had to make that my number one priority and the only one priority that I had in that moment, because I was already so unbalanced. Usually people don't even see like how unbalanced they already are already, like in terms of where they at. They're already in such a distorted position that they have to kind of compensate back in a more balanced position in their lives. So for me it was like, okay, I didn't get a job. I started going out to meet people and stuff like this, and that was my only thing. Like I did that for months, just going out, coming back home, watching videos, going out, coming back home, watching videos for hours. I would go out for like 5 hours and like approach 2 girls or 3. But that was like from those 2 or 3, I would take like so much information because of like it was so scarce to me that I just like I absorbed every little thing that I could have done here and there in all those things. And even with just so much, like people think they need to do all these things to learn so much, but like with such a small samples, you can like learn so much from that. If you allow yourself, if you stop bullshitting yourself, if you're honest with yourself, you can allow yourself to learn so much for just one interaction. I could write a full page of things that I could have done and all this stuff. And yeah, like I wasn't in a position, like I was in a small town. I was, a lot of people when they're in a small town, they're like, oh, but I'm going to get reputation because people start recognizing me. Yeah, I was approaching the same girl 4 times in a row. I don't even remember that girl because I approached so much girls. I start getting recognized in the street by random people and shit. And I got arrested by the police here as well. I got all this shit, but I was like, fuck it, man. It doesn't fucking matter.
Was it worth it? Was it worth it?
Oh, fuck yeah. I'll do it again.
There you go. Yeah.
I'll do it again every time. It's like,
it's always worth it. That's the thing. It's like it's so easy to create excuses, and we think it's like we're protecting ourselves or something. But at the end of the day, like all of that happened to you and you still find it worth it. I mean, it got you where you are right now. So yeah, man. I mean, we always have so much more access to opportunity than we actually see. And this is, I guess, where I could talk about the subconscious mind. We always have opportunities, but if we believe that we don't deserve opportunities, or we're in this scarcity mindset where opportunities don't exist, it's like you won't even see those opportunities. You'll just kind of assume they're like, oh, I'm not good enough for it. Even if there are opportunities, I'm not going to make it or whatever. That's why it's key to actually look at those deeper beliefs that you have in your subconscious mind and let go of that scarcity, let go of that belief that opportunities are scarce, that there's all these excuses that you have to do before you can reach your goal. Like I said, there's always something you can do right now, and letting go of those scarcity-based beliefs will kind of reveal that to you. It's like there's always something to do. There's always something to improve on. And I like how you touched up on just like doing one thing and focusing on one thing. This is, I think, a mistake a lot of people make, and I made myself, is like focusing on too much at once and trying to like juggle 10 different things. When in reality, pick one fucking thing that you love or one thing that you want to master and just put everything into that thing. Like all your energy into one fucking thing. Do that for a year. You're going to be really good at that thing. And now you can either monetize it, or at least you love doing it, or whatever. You have more results in that area. But what most people do is they spread their energy too thin. They want to get everything right. And then it ends up kind of just being mediocre in all these areas rather than mastering one fucking thing. And I think that's
man. Nice. I think like the for me, when I started, I knew that like I was actually smart about my journey, because I knew like what, like I asked myself, what's the thing that if I really master it right now, like will give me the most return on my investment in the long term. And that was the most important thing for me. Like I wanted to master social skills, I wanted to master leadership and communication. So I not only went out to meet people, I got jobs that benefited that, like door-to-door sales. I did a tons of that. I sell it like crazy on door to door. I worked at bars, like trying to get people inside the bars and stuff like this, and all of this to hammer in that's what mattered to me. What would give me the most return on investment in the long term was to get really good at that, be one of the best at that, and then things will be easier for me. So yeah, like a lot of people don't even understand this concept of like return on the investment. Like, okay, what are you doing right now, and what kind of return is that really bringing to your life, like in the long run, and benefit to you? Is it just emotional benefits? A lot of times we all looking for the emotional benefit. We're looking for like feeling good in the short term, and that's what motivating most of our actions. But for me, it was like I didn't give a fuck about my feelings. I just looking at like pragmatically looking at where I want to be and what's going to be the most return I can get right now.
Right.
You
Yeah. I
know?
mean, I've had a lot of moments where I'd just be sitting down watching like some Netflix show. And this was back in college where I spent a lot of my time doing that. And it would just be like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what am I wasting my time on? And most of my time was being wasted with like short term pleasure, watching Netflix, smoking weed. And after doing that for months or maybe even years, you kind of start thinking, like, what if I invested the last 2 years doing what I love? What if I invested the last 2 years doing that thing that's actually going to make me feel fulfilled in life rather than some short term pleasure? And that might feel unpleasant in the short term, but it's always worth it on the other side. But that's the thing. It's like so much easier to get sucked into these pleasure seeking activities because it's rewarding, in the short term. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term the matrix. Like, that's, I think, what the matrix is all about. It's like we're sucked into short term pleasure, and then we give up like our deeper life purpose in a way. And then we kind of just stay stuck in that trap, and it's so much easier to stay stuck in that trap because it's just like pleasure, 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 pleasure. Whereas if you have to break out of that, now you got to embrace some kind of adversity or some type of pain in a way. But it's worth it. But it's hard to make that shift when you're addicted to pleasure. Yeah, what do you think
Yeah,
about
like I think the thing that a lot of people don't really kind of do a audit of, like they don't, like you feel like you're getting this pleasure,
that?
but you think that that's rewarding you somehow, but that you're not looking at like auditing exactly where this current path is taking you, like work your current behavior, where is it going to take you down the line, like 5 years from now? Because it's not going to get, like people think that they're going to get stagnate in one place, but like it's not going to get any easier when you get older to do any change in
Oh yeah.
your patterns, in your behavior. So it's the more you go in it, the more you reinforce it, the harder it gets to actually have that change, that shift to change in the direction of your life.
Right.
So like mapping out, okay, genuinely, if I keep going in this direction, usually for most people is like they're going down, they're going to get worse, they're going to get slower, they're going to get fatter, they're gonna get very, like their life is gonna go to shit really quick. It's like you don't see it coming. It's like the parable, right? It's like at first it seems like you're still, and then you don't see it coming, and then suddenly just goes downhill like really
Yeah.
quick.
And the more set in their ways, the harder it is to switch out of that. The harder it is to give people like that advice, because they're like just so programmed in their, no offense, like shitty autopilot behavior. It's hard to break out of that, especially if you've been doing that for decades. And I've seen this from like, potential clients, family members who are like really much older than I am. It's hard. Like you even can try to give them some advice, but it doesn't land because there's no opening there. It's
Yeah,
like
like
trying, it's trying to
with
tell
people.
your like racist grandparents that they're racist, and it's just like, you know,
Yeah, people like that, like you can still kind of like penetrate their veil, penetrate it, but you gotta like be really like, you gotta know how to get in there, you know, like uh yeah, sometimes it depends on that person, how open that person is, but I guess like there is ways for you to like, sometimes if people can be open through storytelling, like you tell them a story and it kind
Mhm.
of gets in that way, not directly, you know, or you
Mhm.
just kind of like find a moment to kind of like hit them, and you find a moment that like really like makes them wake up like from that moment. But yeah, I mean, if people are not a little bit, not even a little bit open, it's not really use a good use of your time to try to do that. It's not
Yeah.
very smart.
And you can kind of tell, right? You can kind of tell when someone is ready to hear advice and then when they're not. When there's just no point in even giving them any advice or being a mirror for them in a way. This is actually a conversation I just had with my brother. He always tries to give like my parents certain feedback. Like, and I'm like, dude, stop giving them this feedback. They're not ready for that kind of, feedback or reflection or information. But he's like, no, I'm trying to show them. And it's like, no, dude, you got to learn how to be aware if someone is ready for feedback or if they're not. Someone has like a wall up and they're not even ready to even change. You shouldn't be giving them feedback. And if you do, get ready for them to get triggered, get them to lash out and stuff like that. But like, what do you think about that? When is the right time to give people feedback, even if it might like hurt their feelings in the short term? And is there a point where you just shouldn't, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is, like if you start giving feedback like that and people are not asking for it, they're usually gonna get very defensive, and then it's gonna get worse for you to talk about that.
Exactly.
So it happened to me, for example, like someone that was working with me for a while, and I was really like hit, like because I have high standards for those people, and I was like, fucking wake up. And I was always eating them, and I was always arguments and all that stuff. And then later on, because I realized that he already is like so defensive about when I speak about to him about his stuff, I had to
Right.
become nicer to him for a while, like become nicer, become
Mhm.
nice, you know, and then try to get in other different ways. So it's like, I guess it's like you have to, it comes with practice, like with different people, seeing like where is that line with them, like
Right.
how can you push that line further and further, a bit further, and then get but yeah, it gotta come from them being open to at least receive some help. But
Exactly.
yeah, even when people tell me like, yeah, tell me, my destroy my ego, tell me, like, I know that actually, like, even when people say that, like, they don't really want to me for me to say that, like, because a lot of us, we are like, most people are really delusional about themselves, like they have like this completely fucking bullshit delusion, and see themselves like so much higher than they are, and then like they're not aware at all of like all their blind spots and all the things they're doing,
Mm.
and then they're like, yeah, tell me, and then but then I can feel like if I really tell them everything, that person would be like fucking destroyed, or be like, like pissed
Right.
off that I said that thing. But yeah, that's actually something that really passions, like makes me passionate, is like, how do I get in people's head?
Right.
you know
And I feel like I have gotten better at that, right? So like I got better at giving people little reflections that they might even be a little bit open to in a way where it like fits into their worldview. So it's not so like direct or like, hey, you're doing this thing wrong. It's not like that. It's almost like we're talking about something, and then it kind of you just fit it into their worldview in a way. So it's not it seems very smooth in a way. So they're more open. And then if they ask a question from there, you can give more direct feedback. But usually you don't want to do that to someone who's clearly not open to it, or else
I
they
think
do
I think a good way is like, the sandwich method.
sandwich method. Yeah. It's like a
Yeah,
positive, negative, positive.
yeah. It's like, yo, bro,
Give
like that was great. Like you tried your best. That was really nice. Like if there was like one thing that you could improve on, like this one thing, like this one thing, like this little thing, like,
right.
and but still, like you're doing quite well, man. You're improving a lot. I like that. Like it's kind of like you're still validating them, so you're still giving them some positive reinforcement, but you're still giving the advice in the middle. So I think that's a way for a lot of people, and I do like with clients as well. Is like that's the way to kind of give them the feedback so that they can take it. Because if you right away say the thing, like even if it's like that's the thing, if you say right away the thing, the person like automatically like no, like
I feel
starts defending.
Yeah, they might feel threatened, and they might not feel like you actually have their best interests at heart. When you give a little bit of positivity first, it's like, oh, this person actually cares. Then you give them the negative feedback, and then the positive feedback. It's like it's sandwiched in that positively like barrier, so it kind of they can see that you have their best interests at heart.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're not just some like negative, pessimistic person who's like, hey, you should be doing this better. It's like a lot of people are like that. That's why I think people get defensive, you know?
But if you have someone that you trust and you trust each other, and you are like in the same path, like growing spiritually, you can be the best catalysts for each other. Like
Right.
this is what I do with Royal again, talking about is like we were arguing the other day. It was like, why are you always being a douchebag to me? Like why are you always like trying to like trigger me and all this stuff? And I was like, well, you can have life, wait for life, and be waiting for life to come to you and like trigger you, and I force you to grow. Or you can have a catalyst like me, always like triggering you and accelerating that for you,
Yeah.
even if you're not able to see what I'm doing, right? And that's the thing is like you can like if you expose yourself, if you are happy to see your bullshit, if you like happy to get triggered, right? I think that you can change like in a much faster rate
Yeah.
than anybody else.
Right. I think it's a really good way to do it as well. Like actively surrounding yourself with people who will, from a place of love, from a place of wanting to help you, trigger you all the fucking time, or at least challenge you all the time. And I think if you're somebody who has big goals in business, in relationships, in dating, or whatever, probably one of the best things you can do is actually surround yourself with people who are going to challenge you, who aren't just going to be like, good job. It's like they actually create a challenge so that you can grow from there. I think it's something that a lot of guys our age especially could really use to benefit and like gain that power again in their life and stop giving it up to people offending them and stuff like that. But yeah,
Taking responsibility, like even if people like that's the hard part is like when people are really being mean to you and you're still like able to take responsibility in that moment and not like get bitter and like defensive with the other person. I think it's like you get defensive anyways. Like I always got defensive. The difference was like when I was by myself, then I would think about the situation. I'll be like, yeah, I see what I was doing there. Yeah, like I could have acted differently, and then like I can take more. I start taking that responsibility on myself, and then yeah, like if you are able to get triggered all the time, and the first response is to be like defensive, but later on you kind of take the responsibility for it, and you see that you were not right.
right.
Because that's the thing is that everyone wants to be right. Everyone wants to try to be right. And then even when you're not right, you want to be right anyways. Like even if someone has like a very strong belief or strong point of view, they want to be right even if they're wrong. If they already know they're wrong, but they still like they can't let that go. They can't stop defending.
Right. Yeah, I caught that in myself. Like I would get defensive in the moment, but I would be so defensive that I would keep defending, and then later on I would be like, fuck. I should have taken that feedback. I shouldn't have been so defensive. And I think that's honestly like a big hurdle in like giving away your power is like getting so defensive. And I honestly kind of did this reframe where I started realizing that like I want to get triggered, like we were just saying, is like when I feel that, instead of backing down and being defensive, I want to step into that shit. I want to like learn from that defensiveness. Like what is being triggered right now? What is actually coming up? How can I use this opportunity where I got triggered to actually grow and expand and become what's that book, Anti-Fragile? It's like literally become anti-fragile. Like instead of being hit and getting triggered and being like, fuck, defense mode, put up the walls, protection, stay as like the person you are without growing. Instead, use that as a stimulus to evolve, to grow and become anti-fragile, and learn how to use triggers to your benefit, because you're going to be getting triggered your whole fucking life. Like, if your friends don't trigger you, some external crisis is probably going to trigger you. You know, maybe the government will trigger you, maybe family will trigger you. The triggers will keep coming, so might as well learn to use them as fuel and as a stimulus to become the best you. And the difference, I'd say, between from how I used to perceive them, whereas I would get triggered, then shut down. Now I get triggered and I'm like, yes, like excitement comes up. You know, that excitement for being my next version of myself comes up. And if you perceive it that way, man, I think you become unstoppable.
So another really good perspective that helped me, that like when I get triggered, is that we assume that there is an external reality and we are getting things are happening to us,
Right.
right? And that's a form of victim.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a way to say that it's not me creating this, it's something happening to me, and it's someone else doing this to me.
Doing this to me. Yeah.
But if you realize that your consciousness is creating all of it, and you always were creating it, you created the idea of something else happening to you. You created that.
Right.
And now the goal is, the way I see it, with taking responsibility and being more honest with yourself, the goal is to take all that assumptions, all that power away that you gave to a perceived or assumed external reality that you experience, and realize that that never happened in the external reality, that always happened in your consciousness. And that now you're just getting that power back, all that power back. And the emotions are like, basically the way the emotions work is they're telling you like that that's not happening, you're creating that out there, that you experience. You think that you're experiencing something, but you're creating it all, right? So that's
Right.
where people talk about creating your reality. A lot of times people don't understand what that means, but like, that means that you are creating everything that you perceive, everything that happens, even the other people, you're creating all of that. But you're assuming that you're not, because when you do get triggered, all these beliefs come up saying that that's not you creating it, that's something else happening out there to you.
Right. And I think that's like, that's one of the main beliefs that society kind of puts into us, and we kind of just adopt it. And when you say you created it, you're always creating your reality. But let's say like you're 6 or 7, or you're younger or something, and the people around you believe that reality happens to you, that you're at the effect of reality. You adopt those beliefs, and now you're creating them as your own. So that's what it means to create your reality. Like, the people around you's beliefs, maybe they're in a victim mindset, and then you kind of adopt that and you create that in your own reality, and you live your whole life thinking that things happen to you, when all that's really happening is your consciousness. And then because you perceive things in consciousness, you give up that power to these things, and then you just crystallizes. Then you live your whole life thinking this external thing has power over you, when it's really your consciousness fragmented. It's like you take a little bit of your power, you give it to this person. You take a little bit of your power, you give it to this thing. You take a little bit of your power, you give it to what people say, or something like that. But a lot of this work that you and I kind of do is like getting really present, getting in touch with that power, then seeing, where am I giving it up? Where am I externalizing it? Where am I viewing myself as a victim? Where do I believe that things happen to me? Then beginning to kind of see that more clearly, and deconstructing that belief and taking that power back, to the point that you realize everything that arises in consciousness is simply a creation of you. It's not happening to you. And when it feels like it's happening to you, that's the perfect time to heal that and kind of see, why do I believe this is happening to me? When did I adopt this belief? What is this belief? What emotion is associated with it? Just the more clearly you can see it, that it's not really real, then you can start letting it go, and gaining that power back.
Yeah, I think the problem with watching, like looking at the beliefs that we have, is
Right.
that somehow I think that we have even other beliefs that say that there is something wrong of looking at our beliefs, or like if we look at our beliefs, then they're gonna somehow become true if they're negative.
The law of attraction, right? Like if you
Yeah.
focus on it, it's going to expand.
So we are afraid of looking in our beliefs, that we prefer to put them under the rug, like act they're not there, and then like try to compensate externally for those beliefs, like in the form of validation and all the forms we look for security and safety and all this, like compensating for our lack beliefs, not seeing that those lack beliefs that we have, if we actually are able to stop running away from them and looking at them, see that they're not true. They could never be true.
Right. Because only
They appear to be true.
right. Only the ego can lack. Right? Consciousness can never lack anything. But the ego can perceive that it's lacking, and that's the way we're taught, right? It's like you're conditioned to feel like you lack, you're conditioned to feel like you're not good enough. And because you have that belief, you go out and get it from outside of you. You get it from girls, get it from validation, get it from looking cool, wearing cool clothes, getting money. And all this stuff is fine. It's awesome. I love doing all that stuff. But at the same time, you got to realize that you're giving it your power because you believe you don't have it in the first place. When you look within yourself, do you see infinite worth, or do you see like this hole that you got to fill? You know? And for me, I mean, I'm no exception. I'm not like enlightened or anything. Like I feel the same way. It's like I'm chasing all this stuff externally, but then you're like, why do I need to do this? Like, where is this even coming from? Is it coming from like giving my power away to this thing? Or is it coming from fun, joy, like flow, playing the game of life and enjoying that game? But a lot of times it's coming from lack. It's coming from scarcity. It's coming from compensation, just like you were saying. And I think if we want to escape that trap, we do have to look within ourselves. We do have to see, how are we giving our power up? How are we not victims? How are we buying into these lack-based beliefs? And I'd love to actually ask you a question. It's like, because you do a lot of this work yourself, how can you start letting go of those lack-based beliefs? And is there like a practical way to do it? Or is it just like a mental illusion that you have to see through and then be like, oh, I never had lack in the first place, or something like that?
Yeah, I think that the thing is like most of us, we live to avoid that, to avoid looking at that. We manage our lives to never look at that, or most of the time we're not even aware of that, because we're not able to be honest with ourselves about those things, or you're not even aware that those things are happening, because we're so used to being that way, having those blind spots and having those assumptions, that we don't even know that they're there. And I think it's like it all starts with genuine curiosity, investigating about yourself, and kind of like we all running around, right? Running around doing things, distracting. Like we can't, if we have like a little time off, don't have anything to do in that time, we try to fill it up with more things, so we don't stay with ourselves.
It's
But
like
you
escape, constantly escaping.
Yeah, it's constantly escaping, and you gotta want it. You gotta really want to see it. Like, like we say we want to see it, but then we just kind of like look a little bit like, oh nope, let me go back to.
We say we want the truth, but the truth is, uncomfortable when we look at it.
Yeah, like it's like if you've been investing like 10 years of your life in certain belief systems, right? Now, like looking at them and be like, oh wait, maybe I wasn't doing things right for like 10 years or 20 years, or it's like the more you invest in that way, the harder it is for you to be like, no, wait a second, maybe I was stupid, I was retarded, and I was like doing things wrong, like, and so it's like you have to really be willing to see that, to look at the bullshit. Because if it's not a genuine interest, curiosity to see it, and a lot of times I understand that people, like when they see it, they kind of like go the other opposite route of like feeling really sorry for themselves and like beat themselves up, because now they realized they have all these things inside of them and all these beliefs, and they go the opposite route, like really feeling sorry for themselves. So it's not like either exaggerating yourself and boosting yourself, or make going the opposite, the extreme other opposite, with like being extreme victim about it. It's
Mm,
more of like being honest about like, okay, just as a start, like where am I at in my life? What am I actually doing? Because a lot of people, they have these ideas of like who they are, but it's not correct, not aligned with their behavior.
right. Yeah, I caught this big time actually, and I see this a lot in people in self-development, and I saw it on myself. It's like you start learning about self-development and you learn all these tactics, all these techniques, all these tricks. Then what I found myself doing is like building this ego facade around knowing all this stuff. It's like, oh, I know all this self-development information, so I'm better than you are because I know all this information. And it's like this ego that limited my growth, because growth is about destroying the ego. It's about looking at your bullshit, like we're saying. But when you're holding on to this front of someone who knows all this information, the self-development guy, like you're not growing. You're not actually looking at your bullshit because you think you already know. And that's, I think, the biggest trap in spirituality or anything, is thinking you actually really know. Like the best way to grow is admit you don't know. It's like, I don't know. My ego doesn't know shit. Surrender it all up. And that's a hard
Yeah,
decision to make, but that's how you fucking grow. And
yeah, that's a big trap, you know. Like I see a lot of people like they just accumulate all this knowledge reading on books and stuff like this, and then now they like, oh yeah, but I'm so spiritually like when like yeah, like when I see that, I'm like, yeah, that
right,
person is dumber than like this fucking homeless guy. Like in my views, like the homeless guy at least is like, I don't fucking know, I'm just fucking here in a corner. But this
yeah,
guy is like, I know everything, I read all these books, I know all this information, but I still live in my basement. So yeah, but I'm enlightened, you know, like
yeah, man, that's so true. That's very, very true. Actually, you know what I really like that you said is that burning desire, like having a strong desire to actually look at your bullshit, look at your ego, look at your subconscious mind, do that deep self investigation, which is really hard to do. And I'd be curious to hear about what kind of led you to doing that. And I kind of already know, but in my case, I kind of felt that even as a kid, to be honest. Like, I mean, obviously, as I got older and like kind of went through certain things, it kind of led me to looking within. But even as a really like young kid, I remember like being really curious about, in a way, it's hard to even put into words, but I'd say spirituality and just like self discovery and looking at life from a different perspective than like most people view it. Like, even as a fucking kid, like growing up in Morocco, I remember thinking, this has got to be like, there's got to be more to it than this. Like I would see family members and I didn't even think people were happy. Like I would see everyone and kind of just see, oh, they're not really happy. And I was always had this desire, this curiosity to look deeper, to look at things differently, you could say. Would you say you like had something like experienced something similar, or did it you have to go through a lot of, self growth first before you could look within?
yeah, like for me it was like I was such in like I the thing that helped me grow the fastest was that I admitted that I sucked. Like I think a lot of people are hard to find, like they suck, but they find a very hard time to admit they suck. You're like, oh, but no, I know these things and this and that. But actually, I was like, yep, I suck. That's my starting point. Like, if you don't find your starting point, or if you're imagine, like you say, your front is your starting point, then you hardly gonna change that from that place, because you're not aligned with what's true. You're not
Right.
aligning what you think with what you actually be, the way you actually behave, and what you actually embodied in your life so far. And until you actually do that audit and really come to the point where you be like that honest with yourself, where you're like, okay, this is where I'm at, like really this is, and that was the component that really allowed me to start uh be honest with myself. And not only that, but like knowing that my mind wasn't in my favor. I remember when I started, like I genuinely believed that every thought was like a demon entity trying to fucking stop me. I don't even joke. Like every thought was like, oh yeah, like the girl is with her mom and blah blah, I can do it. Like demon, do
Uh,
it.
she's not hot.
Demon, the demon is talking, like let's do it. That demon, like you go the opposite way what the thoughts in my head would tell me. So my thoughts would like, don't do this, it's scary, blah blah. I would just do that.
Right.
and and that really helped me because, but at some, like, yeah, it's at first really helped me because I was taking so much action because I was just not falling into the bullshit of my brain trying to pull me back.
Right.
But then I became like psychotic. So at some point I was like, I was going too much into the other deep end. I was
Mm.
just like taking everything as rationalization, and everything was just bullshit, and I just like burn myself out because I wasn't taking a break, because I thought taking a break was a rationalization too. So so yeah, I guess you have to find the balance. But I mean, if being unbalanced in that direction helps you to get out of your stagnant position
Yeah.
right now, I
Worth
think
it?
that definitely should do that.
Yeah. If it's worth it, definitely do that. I mean, I actually went through a similar phase where you kind of start questioning everything your mind says. It's like you think anything, then you're like, bullshit. It's like you call bullshit on everything your mind says. And I think it's important to go through that phase of like actually not trusting your thoughts, not trusting what your subconscious mind is kind of programmed to repeat on a daily basis. That way you can start seeing the patterns, and you can start seeing how delusional you fucking are, how full of shit you are, right? And that's hard to do, but that's honestly what it was for me. Like I started doing meditation every day and stuff, and just start seeing the delusionality. I don't even know if that's a word, but just how delusional my brain is. Like the rationalizations, the uh, ideas of grandeur that weren't realistic, and just like I'm so full of shit. Like looking at that, kind of letting that go, and then looking deeper and the real desire that's there. Because there's a deeper desire. There's like the surface level bullshit desire. Then there's like the deeper desire of who you truly are, you could say. And yeah, it's important to look at that and be like, oh, my brain's kind of full of shit. My mind's full of shit. All these lies, all these rationalizations. If I really want to change, I have to look through that. I have to let go of that surface level um, lies, essentially. That way I can find out who I truly am on a deeper level, and I can get in
Yeah,
touch with
like
that true desire, right?
some exercise, like every thoughts that excuses come up, because usually when you're too identified with your mind,
Right.
it's like there's not really a separation between you and what the mind is, like what the thoughts are coming, so you think it's your thoughts. So
Mm.
it's very hard for you to like separate yourself from the thoughts. But if you start like seeing all the rationalizations that can repeat themselves in all those moments when you're about to take action or when you're doing something that is outside of your comfort zone, you can start noticing that the same dialogue happens over and over again, like the same excuses, the same stuff. And then you can write that down, like write in a piece of paper and say, okay, when these thoughts come to my head, they're not true. I just wrote them down. They're not me. They're just thoughts, right? And then you create this separation so that you can then see from a different perspective, like, oh yeah, actually it's just a program running in my brain that has a certain direction or a certain agenda, and the program just wants to keep going in the same direction, doesn't want to change, shift direction, and spend all this energy to shift, to have this huge shift of direction. So that's the intent of the program in your head. And if we're so identified with it, it's like it's almost impossible to see the bullshit because you are the bullshit.
Mm.
Right?
Right.
It's like we don't. Yeah, you are the bullshit. Like it's not like
Dude,
there is bullshit. You are the fucking bullshit.
yeah.
That's you know.
I remember kind of looking so deep into my subconscious mind because it's what I do. I'm a subconscious coach. Like I remember looking so deep at it, looking at it so repetitively and intently that I started seeing that almost all my thoughts were coming from this like scarcity based assumption in a way. It's like this deeper belief based in lack, based in scarcity, and it like produced almost all my thoughts. And it sounds crazy to say, but like it became so clear to me at one point that like almost everything I was thinking was based in lack and was based in compensation. And that's usually when you hit that point of like, I can't trust anything my mind says anymore. Like I have to like totally let go of this, look through it, deconstruct it, burn it to the fucking ground. That way I can start creating this new abundance-based perception in a way, you know? And you can do that by taking action in the right direction, but you can also create habits in your day. You can also write stuff down, like do journaling. Be like, this is the new paradigm. This is the old paradigm. Let me let go of the old paradigm, get better at that while also creating the new one and get better at that as well. And then ideally take actions that create that new paradigm, you know? And game, I think, is a really good way to do that. Or anything that kind of challenges you to change, to let go, to step up.
Yeah, like a lot of guys, truth is, a lot of guys could benefit a lot to learning meeting women, because it's such a catalyst, such a powerful catalyst to really expose all this BS
Mm,
that we have inside of us.
right.
And there's rarely any other tools that I found out there that can really expose it in such a short amount of time. You can expose so much of it. But that's why so much guys avoid it. And I see this all the time. It's like the biggest trap that the ego has is that you can still find things to quote unquote improve yourself, but you use those things as a way to avoid the thing that would kill your ego and that would go in the direction of, like, you know, actually the direction that would create the change. you
Right.
you create this persona where you go in another direction that makes you feel like you're changing, but that direction is just like you accumulating all this stuff. You're accumulating all this information,
Right.
and then it makes you feel like you're growing. It gives you this feeling, and that's the perfect defense mechanism for your ego,
Oh
because you
yeah.
can feel that you're growing, but you're not changing. So the ego doesn't die. So it's perfect. It's like a, it's like it's hard to get out of that if you can't be honest with yourself. And the longer you go doing that, the harder it is for you to admit that you've been doing that, because it's like it threatens your identity a lot. No.
It's interesting, right? It kind of gets you thinking about like what do we really want, right? Like what are we really seeking? Because like we start trying to improve ourselves and we just collect all this information, all these feel good bullshit, and we think we're changing, but we're really not. It's just our ego kind of it's like you know how girls do makeup? It's like the ego's doing makeup. It's like looks like it's growing, but it's not really growing, it's just maintaining itself. So my question to you is like if we're actually growing, that means we have to adopt and accept suffering and pain and growth and even negative sensations, negative emotions. So if that's the path, then what are we really chasing? Is it really happiness? Or is it more aligned with truth? Are we chasing happiness, trying to feel good, or are we chasing truth? And when we chase truth or seek for truth, does that mean that we automatically have to go through adversity?
So the way that I see about seeking what people seek is short term feeling good, right? Some dopamine. So it gives you this, it in a way gives you the relief from your most people's regular pain that they experience as their default state. And people are so already defaulted that the pain that they are already identify with it, and it's so like like used to it, like the background air conditioning noise is like you've been there for the entire time, so you already kind of like, it's just you became habituated to that, right?
Right.
So, but the truth is, like, if you want to seek truth instead of seeking these short-term pleasures, you'll go towards the bullshit and towards more like going through the suffering. But going through the suffering, it makes you integrate more of it and become lighter and more stable, and more stable over time, and more stable. And if you can accelerate that, then I can go through all this suffering in like 5 years, and then live the rest of my life in like a much higher state of consciousness, and much stable, and like just joyful and blissful, and really have a different experience of a different dimensions of life that you can't at these lowers when you're seeking the pleasure, because you're always after the next thing, and it never ends. And you always, most of your life you're doing that, you're just running away from pain. That's what most people's life experiences, is running away from pain.
Trying to relieve pain.
instead of facing the pain, going all through it, burning all throughout that pain, and coming on the other side painless, like
Right.
clean.
So yeah, so you have to actually
Wait,
proactively.
let me charge my.
Yeah, sure.
Wait, this guys. Did you turn off this? Oh yeah. Wait a second. My battery's gonna fucking die. Yeah, you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying like, so it's better to proactively create stimulus or create adversity in your life rather than just waiting for it to happen, because it is going to happen one way or another. So you're better off proactively creating it, creating a situation where you are challenged. Maybe you do get triggered, maybe by friends or coaches, and you create that pain, you create that adversity for yourself. That way, it's not just something that happens to you in life and you're like prepared for it in a way. And it makes you stronger. It burns through all those distortions.
You're proactive about it.
Right.
What?
Yeah, and I was saying it.
Yeah, you're proactive about it.
Go ahead.
A little bit leggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like instead of being reactive about it, because this is the thing, we're all in this process of evolution. We're all part of it.
Right.
Regardless if we are aware of it or not, we're all part of it. We all trigger each other. We all being catalysts unconsciously or consciously. But we can do it in a conscious way, become catalysts for ourselves and for others in a conscious way, so you can accelerate that process, the evolution process.
Right. Would you
to
say
yourself and to other people?
Would you say that's like the ultimate truth? Like if we're not really chasing happiness, if we're not really chasing pleasure, and we're actually seeking truth, would you say that that's the ultimate truth? It's just evolution, like forever evolving ourselves and then creating opportunities for others to evolve. I think we're losing connection or something. I can't hear. I mean, I can see you, but I can't hear you.
That's what we are. My connection is.
Now you're back, kind of.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Like, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So, yeah. Did you hear my question?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's what we are doing. Like, we are evolving. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So I was saying, like, if we're not chasing pleasure, if we're not just chasing feeling good and we're seeking truth instead, like, is the ultimate purpose in your eyes of like life in general is to continue evolving ourselves and then create situations for others to evolve. Like, I actually really like that worldview, like that perspective. It's very freeing.
Because that's what we want.
Boom.
We don't want. We feel like we want these things, these material things or these pleasures, but we always get those things, and we always realize that it didn't work, right?
Right.
We kind of realize that after a while. Like if someone is not dumb, they can see that no matter how much you're getting, can you like the connection is so shitty. Can you hear
The
me?
connection's a little slow, but I can't hear you.
Kind of.
Hear you.
I don't know why this. Yeah, but yeah, like I was saying, like we all are in this. That's what we want. We want to evolve. That's what we actually want. And then there is all these things that we are conditioned to desire. But we get them, and we always realize, oh, there's always more.
Mm.
And you can either keep chasing them more forever until you die, or you realize, wait, there must be something else here that I'm missing on. Why am I getting all these things and it's not creating more fulfillment in my life?
Right. Yeah. So what do you think is like the ideal like place to be? Let's say you evolve and you're fully evolved. If there is such a thing as fully evolved, like what's that ideal state like? Like what is that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we are all looking for that. I guess this is deeper topic to talk about, but God is trying to find himself through the experience of form, and it's always and this process is like you were trying to find the source of life through the process of life, and then
Mm,
every entity, every being is trying to expand exponentially. We're all trying somewhat expand in the ways that we know that we try to expand. We're trying to all expand exponentially, but we never satisfied because we want more and more. So what we want is infinity. At least that's the way I see it. We want to be infinite. We want to expand to foreverness, right? So
mm.
that's what we want. So yeah, I mean, the goal of life is to find that you always were God, that you forgot, and then you can get back to the source. We are like sons of God, or whatever you want to call it, or childs of God,
Like
and we all go
microcosm
back.
or something. Yeah. Or the masks of God, as Alan Watts would say. Yeah, man, I totally agree. It's just like we're seeking ourselves. We're looking for ourselves. When we try to make money or try to express, create something, it's like we're looking for ourselves in these things, but then we never find ourselves in these things. We have to look deeper in a way. But yeah, man, that's really inspiring to hear. And I really like that perspective because it's just like this never ending evolution, this never ending growth and expansion. And I think that's what everybody wants. When people try to improve their social skills or they try to become more free financially or however, that's what we want. That's what we're looking for. Like we're looking for freedom. We're looking for expression. We're looking for truth rather than like having all these veils of false selves or false truths around this core central truth. Right. And
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
And the thing is, you can in a lifetime do that, do the whole thing, but you gotta like comprise all that, all those catalyst situations. Instead of spreading them out throughout like 40, 50 years, you can like really to accelerate that. You can bring those catalysts on purpose proactively and like in a very short span of time, and you can get much higher. And that's if you do that in that way, instead of like most people will take a lot of lifetimes to do that because it's
Right.
so
You
slow.
accelerate the process. Right.
Yeah, you can create scenarios and situations for yourself to accelerate that, and that comes as well with honesty, self-honesty.
Yeah.
But you can accelerate to the point where you can do that if you find out about what you really are. Like, let's say, I think someone's I think was you guys talk about Ramdas. He said like if you awake like in the first third of your life, you wake up halfway through, or like if you no if you awake in like the morning, you might be free at noon or something like that. And I like
Yeah.
that. Like you once you go through enough life experience and you expose yourself to more and more catalysts, and then you start seeing the pattern. For me, it was like seeing the pattern of like I couldn't understand was going on in my life, but I looked back, and when I looked back, I saw what was going on. Like you can see much more clearly looking back. Like, oh, I was that person over there, and now I'm this person, and I'm getting more godlike every when the time passes, right? I was like, okay, that's what's happening.
Right.
It's just getting closer, but you can speed that up and make it like you can have that life experience that most people have like in 40 years. You can comprise that in 3 years, really accelerate every day, like
Mm.
just every day, really uh, very honest with yourself, learn from every experience. Don't like cut a lot of learning opportunities by putting yourself above other people. Doesn't matter who it is, like put everyone in the same level, learn from everybody, and you can like accelerate so quickly. It's,
Yeah. And I think you and I are on that journey of actually like accelerating that process. But I think for you to do that, you have to live a totally different life than the average person. You have to live differently than the average plugged in individual. You got to unplug. You got to do things differently. And I think that's really the hardest part for people. It's like they want to still fit in with the masses. They still want to do the things that the masses do and to still get the benefits of enlightenment or the benefits of becoming more conscious or godlike or just more self-developed. It's like to have that reality, you have to live differently. You have to do things differently than just everybody else.
Yeah,
And I
you don't, you don't, you can't be a sheep and expect yourself to then have the life of a wolf or a shepherd.
a lion. Yeah, it's crazy. And I think it's like a difficult decision for people to make. It's like I can't remember who said this, but it's like the safety of the herd. People want to be in the safety of the herd, and then it's like they break out of that. They could get all these growth and benefits and acceleration and becoming more godlike, as you say, but because that's not so clear at first, people tend to stay in the safety of the herd because it's just more safe. It's what they know. It's not dangerous. They don't feel that like threat of like doing their own thing, being their own person, being their own hero of their story. It's a lot easier to just stay in the safety of what everyone else is doing instead of just breaking out of that, and like stepping up and being more true to your true self, you know?
I think the worst thing about that is that there is not even safety in the earth. There is only the imagination,
The
like the
delusion.
the perception of that there is that safety, there is that certainty.
Right.
First place, like it's all imagined, and I think that's the thing is like people hold back to pursue things in their life because of that imagination. That like we all struggle so much in imagination, we suffer so much like in anticipation of things. Then when you actually like been postponing the thing that you know that you should be doing for like 10 years, and you actually then go and do it, you realize how stupid you were for 10 years. Like what the fuck was I, like what the fuck happened, right? Why did I not do that right away? It was not
Yeah.
that, it wasn't scary. Like it's like so much more scarier than when you actually go and experience the thing in reality. You see there's there's nothing bad happens. Nothing bad happens. It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a struggle in your
Mental
mind.
game that you're playing with yourself. And this is actually can be related to the subconscious mind. It's like we are programmed a certain way, and we're programmed to even feel a certain way. And with that comes a lot of, you could say, rationalizations, like excuses, trying to maintain where you are. So you could go do that thing that you want to do right now, but because you're so comfortable in your current way, you're so comfortable in your current patterns, to break out of that is like shit, so scary. And we project all this fear and all this bullshit as like, if I actually took action what I wanted, this bad thing would happen. But then when you wait 10, 20 years and then you go take action on that, you realize nothing happened. It was all a projection. It was all that coming from fears, coming from your subconscious trying to maintain its current state of being. And that's why it's so key to kind of look at your paradigm. Like, what paradigm am I coming from? What are my thoughts? What quality are my thoughts? Are they coming from fear? Am I trying to maintain something? Or do I really want to change? Or do I really want to own my full power? And actually start auditing, am I giving up my power to things outside of me? Am I giving up my power to the fear that I'm projecting? The illusion of mental masturbation of like, oh, the rationalizations essentially, what people think of you, all this stuff, all these subtle ways that we give up our power and we just put things off and we lower our value and we feel lacking and we don't take action. We're playing this waiting game.
Yeah, the biggest problem is that people listen to this content and stuff like this. They're like, oh yeah, that's so inspiring and stuff, and then they go back to wherever do like that's like, it's just I realized that a lot of these personal development people and like a lot of the content is like became the new Netflix. Like they watch it, they're like, oh my god, so cute. Oh my god, it's so nice. Oh yeah, I'm full of bullshit. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then and then like, oh, let me go back to what I was doing before, where nothing really changed. Because that's the thing is that you have to understand that, yeah, that you have to really decide to change. You have to decide to have a state change. You have to decide that you no longer want to be the person that you are in this moment. You don't want to defend that. You want to terminate that person and become someone else.
Yeah.
And until people understand this, they will keep chasing the next self-development program, the next thing, the next shiny object, but they never really address the fact they're just running in circles.
Right. And this is actually something it's very personal to me because I do a lot of what's called shadow work or subconscious work. And I find that a trap that I fell in and a lot of people I work with fall in is they get into this paradigm of like, I got to keep letting go. I got to keep healing. Um, and it's like they're waiting for this future where they're finally going to heal and make it to this point. But here's the trap. And this I think is really important to understand is like part of this work is actually getting present to your subconscious and doing the healing work and developing self-love and all this stuff. But at the same time, there comes a point where you just stop tolerating. You have to make that decision to stop tolerating whatever it is, pattern, trauma, fear that you're waiting to let go of. You have to just stop tolerating. You have to, it's like a decision you make. It's an act of will. And you got to stop giving your power up to this thing and just make
You gotta stop and give it meaning. I think the problem is that
significance, meaning, power.
yeah, like the idea of shadow work is that people become like, oh yeah, now I have been vulnerable and I have to do all these trauma release and all these things. When actually, like, come on, it's just a feeling, it's just a sensation, and then you just keep creating all these stories in your mind, these narratives, and then you create an identity of being the shadow worker or the person that is healing, and then you create just a new ego. This is just a new ego of the healing person, ego, right? And then it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, like, oh yeah, I'm experiencing all the time healing. Yeah, I feel healing now. I'm the healing person, and I went through a phase of that. I was like, yeah, I'm healing, and then I actually spoke with some coach that was helping me, and he was like, yeah, how do you know that you're healing? And I was like, yeah, I believe that I'm healing. Oh shit, yeah, fuck. I was never healing. You never were healing. Actually, you just create a new belief that you were healing. It's more of like you stop identifying with your feelings and giving them any sort of like meaning to it. Like it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a sensation that is passing by. And if you don't address it, if you don't resist it, if you just allow it to do whatever it's doing and allow it to be, it's just going and just come and goes.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think that in the beginning, when you just start, you do kind of have to go through a phase of healing, of allowing yourself to feel the sensations and emotions and accepting them and stuff like that. But eventually, even that can become a trap where it's like this comfort zone of you healing and feeling, and you're not really making any progress, and you're waiting for some better future when you can feel better, then you can take action. But that's not going to happen. So it really like comes down to do the healing for a while and then see that like, dude, you are still like creating this perception that you're waiting. Like you are actually creating, you have to take full responsibility for this trauma or this sensation or emotion and realize like I'm creating this. By choosing to tolerate this and wait till I'm fully healed, I'm giving it more power. I'm actually creating it. And that takes like that act of will, that decision of like just sucking the power back. As weird as that sounds, like even if it's just for a few seconds or instants where you can suck the power back and realize you had the power all along, you can make that act of will, that decision. And I think that'll create more healing than just sitting and waiting to heal, right?
Like healing. That's the thing. Is like people don't understand is that healing really happens if once that you were like in a certain situation that triggered you, and you get a disproportionate reaction to reality, and then when you go back to that situation, you no longer has that response. There is no more internal reactivity from that. That's when you really heal that. So I think even taking action can be the most powerful catalyst for your healing. It's not like you're healing at home and you just sit there and just like, okay, now I'm healing. Now when I feel better, then I'll be ready. No, it's just like healing and action can come together, and you can apply both at the same time.
Yeah.
And you and use both as catalysts for each other. You can catalyze with action, you can catalyze more healing. You get triggered more and you can heal more. So
yeah. What do you think? What do you think is like the biggest block for people actually just embracing that perspective of actually just allowing themselves to get triggered, putting themselves in a situation, taking action? For me, I think the biggest block is all about fear of what other people will say, fear of people's judgment, people what they'll think, what they'll say. That's at least my experience. Like the biggest
Mhm.
block to me actually just fucking doing it, as Nike says, just do it, like taking action, like making that act of will. The biggest block for me was just like, what will people think? How will people judge me? How will I be perceived? And even a little bit of fear of like, oh, won't I like of how I'll feel going through that process. But as soon as you kind of make peace with that and accept that, you can do it. You know, you can jump on that opportunity or take action. What do you think though?
So what can you rephrase the question? You were saying like
What do you
out.
think is the biggest block for people actually making that act of will, accepting the fact that they're going to get triggered, accepting the fact that they're going to have to go through adversity in a way, and embracing the trigger, embracing the pain of the process? What do you think is the biggest block? For me, I think it's people's
Mhm.
judgment, but I'd like to hear your perspective.
So the thing that blocks them to kind of like proactively going for being triggered, or
Yeah,
just to kind of.
just to just embrace the process of taking their power back. And I think here's what I mean. I mean, for example, when let's say you are triggered by something and you're waiting to heal, and then you decide to say, fuck healing, I'm just going to take action. It's going to make that act of will. It's going to make that decision.
Mhm.
In my experience, the biggest block to doing that is just like you're waiting to get ready in some future and you're afraid of people judging you before you're ready, right?
Yeah, like you gotta see what is this, what is the thing that you will gain from not doing it, like what, because if you're not doing it, is you still somewhat believe that it's more positive, it's as more benefit from than doing it. So
Right.
looking at like what's the actual benefit that you perceive that you'll get if you don't do it, and then like what is that, what is exactly, is that because you're afraid of a hypothetical feeling that will come up when you do it,
Mhm.
right? But then what is that exactly, what is that, like really pinpoint what is that feeling that you're afraid of, what, and even when it did happen, what was so bad about that, what was so scary about it, like what was scary about the feeling,
Right.
did you
Well,
die?
that's the thing. It's like the feeling itself isn't scary. We project that onto it. But if you can kind of accept the fact that you're going to feel a certain way and just don't project that it's scary, it's a lot easier to go through. It's just like these stories that we attach to how we feel and what will happen that makes it feel impossible to do.
Yeah, like we like I said, it's like people are suffering from anticipation, and it's more about like how much relevance you're giving to certain narratives in your mind about what is about, like what's going to happen if you do it, but actually just going there, like this is the thing, is like you don't need to jump into being super uncomfortable situations and being like super triggered all the time, like that's not what I'm saying, is like you can get yourself into it, baby step yourself into it, and
Mm.
then lean into over the edge of what your comfort zone is, and then expand that, and then over time when you gain that momentum, then you can increase the volume knob of what you can handle and what kind of circumstances you can put yourself in, and then you can really get accelerated. After like a certain point you can really accelerate because you can expose yourself in such a more like a density of catalytic experience that you proactively choose to face. But I think the best way to do it is, at least for me, was like this is hard to explain because it's not like not most people's priority, but for me, my priority was to be authentic and to say the truth regardless of what happens. And I was kind of like, I guess positively, I was like not aware of I was doing that, and I thought, and I was projecting everybody else that everybody was like me and everybody wanted the truth, right? At some point, but I was always like getting all these people triggered with me, and I was getting triggered, and and then I start seeing like how much that was helping me and helping them. Like I start seeing how like telling them their truths, I was benefiting so much more other people, even though they weren't really seeing it that way. I was
Mm.
like seeing, oh yeah, but like because I was always focused on my growth. I think if you gotta be honest with yourself, like right now in your life, is your behavior towards your growth, or is your behavior towards your comfort zone? And and then see, okay, if you say, like, people say, I want these things, all these accomplishments, get all these things in my life, but then I'm not willing to see all these attachments that I'm holding on to that I still perceive beneficial, and then I'm saying I want that, but actually my behavior says that I want this over here. And then until you accept the fact that you don't want that, and you want this, like, really come to accepting, like, oh, actually, I say I want this enlightenment and all this shit and all these things, but actually I want to be validated, because that's the way I act. Like, when I'm with someone, I'm just talking all these things that they don't care about, but I want to talk about to show them how much I know and all these things. Like, you can start seeing this in your behavior of, like, that's are the things you're actually seeking. Is displayed to when you become more aware of how you act with other people and stuff like this. I think validation can be the one of the easiest things to see right away. Is like, how are you, like, the sneakiest ways, like the sneakiest and the gross ways that you do when you interact with other people, that you just want to be liked and, like, be seen, and you're like, that you want yourself to be, like, different, like, oh yeah, like, look at me, like, look at how cool I am, right? But then you say, like, oh, look at me, look at how cool I am, I want to be enlightened. I want to be enlightened. Look, guys, hey guys, I'm so enlightened. And then that's the worst. Like, when people say, like, oh yeah, I'm already really advanced spiritually or whatever, and then they try to cover their triggers. They're like, I don't get triggered. And then, like, something happens and they get triggered, but they tension up and, like, they hide it. Like, oh no, I'm not triggered. I don't get triggered. Like, that's the thing, is like, it comes down to being really honest about, like, how do you really respond to things and how you behave, and not covering that up and saying I want that instead.
Yeah, it's really easy to do that too. Like, I think it's really easy to have this image in your mind of, like, oh, I'm doing good. I'm learning all these techniques, self-development, that kind of stuff. But in your behavior, you're still attached to the ego. You're still gaining validation, looking for validation. You're still essentially feeding that comfort zone. But in your words, you say you're done with that. But it's not true. It doesn't reflect in your behavior. And I think a lot of people are in that space. It's like, they say, this is what I want, but then their behavior shows that they don't really want that. So there's this misalignment, and it takes some balls to actually admit, I'm saying this, but I'm actually acting this. And I have to take responsibility for the fact that I'm acting that. And it's not just happening to me. Like, I'm doing that. Like, I'm actually maintaining this ego facade comfort zone thing, and then saying that I don't really want it. But
And the biggest trap is that then you can use your knowledge about spirituality to cover, even, like, in a smarter way, cover what your manipulation and all the things you do, to say that it's spiritual. That's even, like, oh, I'm acting out of love, but then it's being manipulative. But then it tells other people, but no, it was from love. Like, that's where you're just like, you're not gonna grow. You're gonna stagnate, because you're stagnating there because you're not aligned. You're not aligned with what actually is real, what you've been doing. You're telling yourself a story about the things that you're doing. You're not being real with yourself, and if you can't be real with yourself, then you're not able to unstuck yourself and grow.
Yeah. And I think we're really afraid of that, right? There's a fear of, like, being honest with yourself, looking at your bullshit, admitting that you're full of shit. And we think that we won't like it. Like, if we're honest with ourselves, it won't feel good. But in my experience, it feels the best when you admit that you're full of shit, but at least you're being honest with yourself. At least you're being authentic. I am full of shit, okay? I am full of shit. I have a lot of shit to do and work on and heal.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, you're full of shit, and then if you want to start uncovering your shit, and you're gonna start seeing the shit in everybody, like, this is the thing, is when you start uncovering your own bullshit more and more and more, and then you
Yourself.
get higher levels of awareness that everyone else is just like, what the fuck is going on with the world? Like, holy
Everyone's full of
shit.
shit. Oh my god.
Holy shit, man, this is fucking nuts. And then the thing is, like, you are still full of shit, but now you have less shit. Everyone else is full of shit, but you're still full of shit too. Everyone is full of shit.
Yeah.
And then you're just seeing all this thing happening, and then the thing is, the less you become full of shit, the more other people think you're full of shit. Because they're gonna project their bullshit onto you, and then
Right.
you're gonna trigger other people more, and they're gonna get more defensive around you because of the way that you are less full of shit and you're more real, more truthful with people. And then people think you're the crazy one, and they're all the ones that are right. And that's another thing, is like, if you really want to be truthful, if you want to align yourself with truth, you got to see that the more higher you get, the more other people will like think that you're fucking lunatic. And the
Right.
more like you're gonna be kind of unrelatable, or you're gonna be like always like the person that triggers everyone, and then you're gonna get less people to like less people will like you. And it's like, and then at that point you're like, you still probably have some validation tendencies, and you're like, okay, but like, what do I really want? do i
Mm.
want do I want to like play safe now and like get these people that, even my clients, like, should I like be nice to them so that like they work with me again or whatever, or that I make them feel good, or should I keep going and then acting on the truth more? Because that's not going to be other people's bubbles. We call it the bubbles, right? Other people's bubbles won't be happy with what you have to say and what you share, because that really is very threatening to
It's
them.
threatening to the bubble. Right. Exactly. Yeah, man. I mean, I think I'll definitely any day take the path of being more authentic and kind of triggering people, at least being true to myself, rather than like falling into this people pleaser mentality, keeping people comfortable but not helping them. You're not actually helping people by reinforcing their illusions. If they're full of shit, but then they think they're not full of shit, and you're reinforcing that belief to them that, yeah, you're not really full of shit. You're not doing them a service. You're not helping them in any way. So
And
you're
they
gonna
might like you more, maybe.
like
They will like you more.
exactly. So like, what do you really want? Do you want to be of service, or do you want to just like please people and then have them stay in their shitty situation? And same for you. Do you want to improve your life, be real with yourself, call out your bullshit, and be authentic and feel how that feels? Because it feels good to be authentic, to be real. Or do you want to just be in this delusion, be comfortable, stay in your comfort zone, but you don't grow, you don't change, you don't evolve? Your choice.
Yeah, and when it comes to coaching, that's another thing, is, do you like, a lot of times a lot of people are not ready to, like, a lot of people, they prefer to pay like a seminar or whatever, where they all get like together and they'll give validation to each other and they're all happy, right? They prefer to go to that scenario where they feel they're growing, and they create like these communities where everyone is like validating each other and being nice to each other, and like, oh yeah, you're so cool, or oh yeah, you're so spiritual, blah blah. Everyone wants to validate their own spiritual identity, and then you get into these communities, right? But is that spiritual? And it's like, that's the thing, is like, it's crazy to see that people prefer to spend tons of money on things that will not work, not change them, but will keep like those bubbles, like getting this approval and dopamine, than actually going to someone that will like trigger the shit out of them and like be fucking, like, be much more real with them. And yeah, a lot of people are more inclined to go in the direction of playing the validation cards, and like still spending money on a coach, but knowing that they're gonna spend that money, but they think they want to change, but they're spending that money for other reasons. They're going for other reasons. They want to get validated in the community, or like, I think another thing is about clients of mine, like, people prefer to hang out with people that makes them feel superior. Like, if they prefer hang out with people that they look down on, but they don't want to hang out with people that like make them feel insecure, right? But
Right.
but I always prefer like be the dumbest guy, like if I'm the smartest guy, like, and a
All
lot
the
of times,
people
unfortunately, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I am the smartest guy in the room most of the time. But that kind of pisses me off. Like, what the fuck,
right.
Like, I don't want to be, in that position. But a lot of people, they prefer to be like that. They have a group of friends, and then just, if they are the smartest people in their group of friends, they're like, oh my god, yeah, look at me, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's just a trap.
Facts. Yeah. So it's really about like, what do you want? It's like, do you want the truth? The truth's not necessarily going to feel good. And that's the paradigm most people are in. It's like pain, pleasure, running away from pain, seeking pleasure. And if you really want to grow, you have to totally transcend that shit. You have to accept it's like, here's this pain, here's pleasure, and I'm going to be right in the center. I'm going to learn from both. Because I accept the pain, I'm going to get more pleasure. But if you're constantly like chasing pleasure, escaping pain, it's like this high-low thing. It's like you're always oscillating. You're always
Like a good thing for me is like a good exercise for people to do is like when you're in a certain social situation, and at some point people like start complimenting you, or you feel like, feel good in that space, like you feel like your chest gets more influctuated, and you're like more confident in that scenario. Just look at, like, when I see that happening with me, I'm like, shit, like, actually, like, because if I feel up now, then when people don't, then I'm gonna feel down, I'm gonna feel negative, right?
right.
Because I'm feeling the external is influctuating me. That means that I'm vulnerable as fuck. I don't want to be vulnerable. People talk about vulnerability as this new way to be spiritual. Like, let's be vulnerable together and like talk about our shitty existence together and like cry in a corner, right? But I'm like, no, fuck no. Like, I want to be vulnerable in the sense I want to see the bullshit. I want to work through it. I want to integrate it, but I don't want to be vulnerable. Your true self isn't vulnerable. Is complete opposite of vulnerable.
Mm.
So that's what you want to be. You want to be indestructible
Right.
and vulnerable.
You don't essentially like, you don't want to be pinging so much off of what's happening to you. Right? You want to in a way be
Source it. You want to source. You want to be the source of.
you want to be coming from source. You want to be emanating who you are rather than like what's going on in the environment. Is there pleasure? Is there pain? What's going on? Like, instead of that, it's just like embrace all that arises in the environment and realize that you can choose how to respond to it. You can come from source, you could say. You can come from within out rather than like what's happening outside of me, then ping off of that. But that's hard, to do for most people. But it's something you can work on, You can work on seeing like, where are my buttons being pushed by the external? Where am I still pinging from the external? Where am I still getting feelings of safety from like this environment, and then feelings of like threats from this environment? Just learn to deconstruct that and not depend on it so much. And just come from, like you said, source.
Yeah, man. I think that's what we want. We want to be sourcing our experience and not not being depending on some external events and circumstances to
Right.
create that. No, actually, those external circumstances never created it. We allow ourselves in those moments to source it. We give ourselves permission in that moments, those few moments that we can feel some pleasure or good in our lives, is we just allow ourselves, we give ourselves permission to feel that way in those moments. But why, like, only wait for these small moments in our life and then live in pain for most of it? What kind of life is that?
And I think it's really key to start creating these like scenarios for yourself, like a consequence for yourself. That kind of gets you in that sourceful place all the time. Because most people are waiting, right? They're waiting for something to happen for them to come from a sourceful place. They're waiting for something to happen for them to actually do the things they know they should be doing. But imagine right now, like this was actually in the seminar you sent me. It was like, imagine your daughter or your son has a gun to their head right now. Would you do the thing? Like, it's a tough question, right? It's a tough thing to ponder. But like, imagine that was the case. Imagine some emergency scenario happened right now and you had to take action what you wanted to take action on. You have no choice. Imagine living like that all the time.
That's
Like
what the seminar, like, where people are like, how do I do this? How do I do that? I'm like, no, already know how.
do it.
Fucking, you already know exactly how. You just don't want it bad enough, and that's what it comes down to. People don't want to change. They say they want, but they don't want to bad enough
Yeah.
to actually do that. So
Or they
that,
want this result, but then they also want other things that they're kind of hiding from themselves. Like you want to get this result, but you also want to stay comfortable. Like, so be honest with yourself that you also want to stay comfortable.
you want it more than the result than changing.
Exactly. If you wanted the result more, you would make that happen and you would let go of the comfort. But that's the thing, is like, that's where the seeing your bullshit comes in. It's like, look at how you are still attached to comfort, how you are still attached to wherever you are right now. And if you weren't attached, you just move on, but you are. So be honest with yourself there.
Yeah, we get exactly what we want, and we think we're not getting exactly what we want, but we until we understand that whatever you get in your life now, it's exactly what you want. You want that. Like, nobody's like forcing you to behave the way you behave. You just choose to keep behaving that way because it's just the path of least resistance. So you chose to act that way.
Yeah.
You want it that way. If you didn't want it that way, like you said, if you was your life dependent on it, you would make another way. When something is a priority in our lives, we make space for it. We create space. We make it happen. If it's really a priority, if it's not, we just keep telling ourselves that we do want, while keep acting on other things that we perceive more beneficial.
Right. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah. Well,
about priority. It's like, what's your
what?
priority? What do you want?
Yeah. What's priority? What's
What do you
more
want most?
important?
Facts. Yeah, man. We dropped a lot of value here.
Yeah, man. I think the main problem is a lot of times people are not like, even when you give the best value, is like when people don't listen because they're looking for it in some other places, right?
Yeah.
They're looking they still don't understand certain things as valuable, or they don't perceive them as that way. Like wanting truth. Like, most people are like, why would that be valuable to my life? Why would I gain from that, right? So, like, you know. They don't understand that yet.
Yeah. I would also say, like, be aware of, there's like, sometimes it feels like there's like this gravitational field or force of our old patterns. Like the way you're conditioned subconsciously, because you've repeated it for so long, it has a gravity of its own. So if you're to break out of that, it's like a rocket breaking out of the atmosphere. It needs to hit escape velocity or whatever. It takes some energy to break out of that gravitational field of what you've been doing up to this point. The rationalizations, the comfort, all of that. It has a gravitational field. And you got to break through that initially and let it go for you to create this new momentum. So I think that's the biggest, obstacle for people, is they keep getting sucked back into that, like, gravity, that gravitational field of just who they are, their ego, the patterns. That's why subconscious awareness is so key. Like, becoming aware of, what are you subconsciously looping every day? What are those patterns that have gravity of their own? Then learn to see through that and let those go and surrender them. That way you can create a new version of yourself. So it's really about, how bad do you want it? Are you willing to do that work? Are you willing to look within? Are you willing to sacrifice those old patterns? Yeah.
The answer, unfortunately, I guess for most people, would be like, nope.
Nope. Hell no. Yeah, man.
Yeah, but already kind of long live stream, but I think was good. Anyways,
Yeah, it's really fun. Thanks for having me on, bro.
my pleasure, bro. I guess we can finish here. There's still a guy watching right now. If you have questions right now, we can wait for a couple of minutes. But if not, we can just end it. And yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and we can do one next week in my group as well. If anybody watching wants to catch that, we're gonna do another live stream just like this next week on my Facebook group. So
yeah, let's do that. Maybe we can go more woo woo.
Yeah, we got pretty woo woo here, but we can take it a step further for sure.
Yeah, I think you can always bring back like whatever concepts from like higher teachings. You can always kind of dumb them down, or not dumb down, but like make them more accessible.
Right.
the way that you talk about them, so not make them too extraterrestrial. Let's call it that way. Like just try to
Yeah.
make them a little bit
More
more.
relatable.
Actually, I've been listening. You were talking about the Law of One, and I found on Audible.
Hmm.
Uh,
I ordered the second and third book too. I finished the first one.
okay, yeah, like I don't know if it's the same book, but I ordered in Audible the Raw Contact,
The raw content.
Teaching the Law of One. Yeah.
So what I saw, there were different versions. So there was like the original. I think it was like 5 books that are original, and then there's like different summarized versions and stuff like that. But
Yeah, this one is like 15 hours, so I guess I don't know. It's like a part 1 and part 2.
oh, okay. Well, I got them separately. So I mean, let me bring it. Let me show you. So this is the book 1, Law of One.
The
book
raw
1.
material. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got through it. It's kind of mind blowing. So I just ordered the following 2, and I think there's
What was
5.
the biggest takeaway from that so far?
My biggest takeaway. Let me think about that. The fact that essentially our reality is kind of illusory. Not kind of, it is illusory. And just reading this book kind of really made that very clear, and how everything we kind of perceive, the rationalizations, the excuses, our thoughts, our attachment to our thoughts, our attachment to our bodies, our attachment to our circumstance, all of it, like the ego itself is all very illusory, that who you are is beyond that. And that's something you can find in any spiritual book, but in this one, it's very unique perspective, because it's literally like channeled material from an extraterrestrial. And I mean, take that as you. I mean, whether you want to believe that or not, like
What you just said, like most people are like, okay, these guys are completely lost.
this
They're like
guy's nuts.
extraterrestrial entity.
But like you read it, then things start clicking, and you're like, that makes fucking sense. Like it just resonates, and it also lines up with all the other spiritual teachers that I learned from. Everything that I've heard from like other spiritual teachers, it just fits totally into this, as crazy as it may sound. But I found it really helpful. I found that like seeing it that way, seeing how like everything's illusory and you can kind of wake up at any moment that you decide to, very, very helpful mindset to have.
I think the main thing that I really benefited from the Law of One and raw material and Bentinho's teachings is that I guess that even most of other teachers, the experience that I had is like there is still a lot of like cultural biases and like human biases in the teachings. There is not like a teaching where it is not biased at all, and like not even from this planet. And I think that the difference from Law of One is that the source is not from this planet, or appears so to be not from. So it's not distorted from a human perspective. So I like that about it.
Yeah, man, I'd be curious to talk about that. Let me know when you're done with the first book. We could do like a book club thing and just break it down.
Yeah. So yeah, let's end the stream and we can talk about this off the stream so people don't think we're fucking. No, I'm joking.
Sounds good. Sounds good, man.
Yeah, guys. Peace.